Welcome to the driveway garden. Believe it or not, it's time to order the garlic. I just finished my puny harvest. You can check that out in my prior videos and you can see how I didn't have success with garlic this year, but that doesn't stop me. I'm ready to gear up and do this for next year. And the first thing that I'm improving is thinking about my order right now. In fact, I just ordered my garlic for the 2027 harvest today. I'm targeting to plant that this coming October 2026 with a harvest in July of 2027. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any garlic visuals for you because my harvest for this year was puny and I haven't received my garlic. I just ordered it today. Please join me later and we'll have plenty of new garlic, seed garlic, that you can see as we plant it for next year's harvest. I often have ordered my garlic too late. In prior years, I've been stuck only getting what was left or what was available because I just waited too long. A lot of the places you might get garlic from will sell out by mid to end of September. Now that we're sitting here mid-August, it's time. It's time to buy your garlic before you see the sold out tag on the variety that you might have been interested in. It's worth understanding why the deadline is in August when the garlic doesn't even arrive until October. When you order seed garlic now, you're buying from a crop that is still curing in a barn somewhere. The grower isn't shipping anything until late September at the earliest because the bulbs aren't ready. What you're really doing in August is claiming an allocation. You're reserving your share of the harvest that's already been dug up and counted. That means the sold out tag isn't about shipping capacity, it's about a finite pile of garlic being spoken for, and it doesn't go evenly. The interesting varieties, the ones people write about, they're going to go first, and by the middle of September, you're choosing from what's left rather than what you wanted, which, as I said, is the position I've usually found myself in. The nurseries in our area do a good job of supplying garlic, and I think that's a fine way to do it. I enjoy the luxury of not having to go anywhere, and so having it shipped to me is just fine. But I know many of you actually visit the nursery anyway. I had a realization the other day that that's not an experience I share because I do almost everything from seed. As a result, I also struggle to have enough big successful plants to really fill out my garden the way I would if I did rely on local nurseries. They do a pretty good job of helping us grow amazing gardens. In any case, that's a side story. Just getting back to the point that I don't have a natural touch point at a nursery to go pick up garlic unless I were to make a special trip. And that's the thing I really don't want to do right now. So when it comes to ordering garlic, because I knew I was going to be talking about this with you all, it inspired me to do a little more homework and see where else I might order, because my go-to is usually just Territorial seed, and they do great. I probably will go back to them in the future. There's no good reason why I didn't order from Territorial seed this year, other than I wanted to try some other producers and be able to share that experience with you. So a couple of producers that are local to my area that I found online, Hood River Garlic and Deschutes Canyon Garlic. I don't have experience with either one of these, but based on their websites, they both had a wide variety that I'd be interested in. Also, in terms of pricing for mail order seed garlic, I found that between them and Territorial, the prices were all pretty comparable. There wasn't a substantial difference between the prices for them, at least for what I'm specifically looking for. For me, the choice between the two that are new to me here, Hood River Garlic and Deschutes Canyon Garlic, was really just a coin flip in terms of wanting to get some experience with a different grower. So for this year, I'm starting with Deschutes Canyon Garlic, but I may very well get to using Hood River Garlic next year. When you're ordering garlic, keep in mind there are two broad categories, softneck and hardneck. What I grew last year was hardneck. Hardneck is the one that has the scapes, which you can then harvest before you harvest the actual garlic. As many have pointed out in some of my other videos, where they saw that I missed cutting a couple of the scapes, it's actually best to cut your scapes off on hardneck garlic because that will increase the size of your bulb. Hardneck garlic is not considered to last as long on the shelf as softneck garlic, and the hard stem of hardneck garlic makes it not ideal for braiding. Braided garlic is the other main category, which is softneck garlic. What you see braided up is usually softneck garlic, and one of the advantages of softneck garlic is that it has a much longer shelf life. There's a bit more to it than that. And it's worth saying because most of the advice you'll read on this was written for somewhere that isn't here. The real difference between the two is that hardneck garlic needs a proper sustained chill through the winter to break it into separate cloves. Without that chill, you would end up with a single round, which isn't a failure, but isn't really the garlic bulb you're used to either. Softneck garlic needs that far less, so in the South, softneck garlic is really the only sensible answer, and in the upper Midwest, it's hardneck or nothing. We're in an unusual, fortunate position here in the Pacific Northwest of being able to do both. Portland gives hardneck the cold it needs in most winters, and it's mild enough that softneck is perfectly happy here too. Very few places will sit in that kind of overlap, so if you read that hardneck doesn't do well in a mild climate, that's not really for here. That's advice from somewhere further south, and it doesn't apply here in the maritime climate of the Pacific Northwest if you're here with me. What does work against us is the wet. It isn't the cold that rots a clove over the Pacific Northwest winter, it's sitting in water, which is one of the few genuine advantages I could have growing in containers on the driveway. I didn't appreciate this when I put the garlic in my beds last year, and that may be what happened to some of my disappearing softneck garlic. Here, by planting in containers on this driveway garden, the drainage will take care of itself. The two types really do different jobs. Hardneck gives you scapes in June, larger cloves, easier peeling, and flavors that people just get evangelical about. Softneck gives you more cloves per bulb. It's a little bit smaller, but as I mentioned earlier, it keeps for months longer. The way I would put it is that hardneck is what you would eat first and enthusiastically, and softneck is what gets you through the next spring. That is if you're growing a lot. Because my garlic this last year didn't come out as well as I want, I'm going to turn to varieties that I've grown before so I can focus more on my growing technique rather than experimenting with a different kind of variety. Although you better believe, if I had more space, I would love to experiment with a bunch of different varieties here. If you go to any of the companies that I've mentioned here, Territorial, Deschutes Canyon Garlic, or Hood River Garlic, you'll see there's a wide variety of options you can choose from. If you've got the space, it'd be fun to do. For my small space, I'm going to have to try different varieties by rotating through the options over multiple seasons. For this next coming season, because again, I want to focus on my growing technique, not on whether the variety is actually the right variety for me, I'm going to grow Inchelium Red, which is a softneck variety that I've grown in the past successfully, and Music, which is a common hardneck variety grown in our area. I've also grown that in the past just fine. With those two varieties, I'm ordering the lowest quantities that you can order from Deschutes Canyon Garlic. I'm ordering the ½ pound each, which is more than enough for the small space that I have. It's worth doing some arithmetic on this because ½ pound doesn't mean much until you actually think about the number of plants it can create. Music is a porcelain type, and porcelain types are on the extreme edge. They're going to have 4 or 6 enormous cloves per bulb and only 4 or 5 bulbs per pound. ½ pound of Music will get me somewhere around 12 to 15 cloves, which results in 12 to 15 plants. Inchelium Red is an artichoke type, and it goes entirely the other way. 12 to 20 cloves in a bulb, most of them are modest. ½ pound, that's 35 to 50 cloves. Same weight, 3 to 4 times the number of plants. That's something to think about. It's not obvious when you're ordering garlic that if you want equal numbers of hardneck and softneck, you shouldn't order an equal weight. I ended up ordering the same ½ pound of each, but not because I anticipated I would get equal amounts that way. It's because that was the minimum order quantity that I could get. And I needed to go with the minimum order for this driveway garden. So for what we're going to be working on together here, the number I'm anticipating we're going to get is somewhere between 50 to 60 cloves. 50 to 60 plants is actually way too much for me to have in this driveway garden. At ordinary spacing, that would take something like 12 to 14 square feet of ground. So that's all to say, I'm expecting to have more garlic coming than space I actually have. And I suspect I'm not alone in that, because that ½ pound is often the smallest quantity most growers will sell you. If you garden in a small space like I do in the driveway, you'll routinely end up with more garlic than you have room to plant. That's just how it goes. Assuming that you're actually using mail order garlic, that is, as opposed to picking up from the nursery. And again, that's what I mentioned earlier, that would be one of the advantages of getting your seed garlic from your local nursery. But for me, since I didn't want to leave the house to get my garlic, I have a few honest answers to deal with this issue. I'm going to plant a little bit closer than the books say, maybe 4 inches rather than 6 inches in my containers, particularly for the Inchelium cloves. They're a little bit smaller. That'll let me maximize the use of my driveway garden, so I think it's the right trade. You don't have to plant every single clove. The outer ring of the artichoke type clove is large, and the ones that are tucked inside are usually the smaller ones. Smaller cloves, smaller bulbs. So maybe I just don't plant the smaller ones, take those into the kitchen. And as with most things in the garden, surplus always has a proper use. In this case, you can grow green garlic. Cloves are planted deliberately tight, 2 to 3 inches apart. You're pulled young in the spring and you use the whole thing like a spring onion. It could be a really cool thing to eat. It arrives in March when there's very little else, and it turns a spacing problem into a harvest. I'll work this all out when the garlic actually arrives, and we'll do the planting together. The holy grail of growing your own garlic is to get some big bulbs and then be able to save garlic from your largest and best bulbs so that you can grow your own from that going forward. My harvest this year was so meager that I'm still at the beginning stage of growing from seed garlic. The reality is, I'll probably patronize the seed garlic producers indefinitely because I'll always want to try something different anyway. I should address the obvious alternative, which is planting a clove from the supermarket. And I want to be honest about it because the usual argument against it is that it won't sprout. It has been treated and nothing will happen. But that's not reliably true. Sprout inhibitors are applied inconsistently and often not at all. Plenty of people have grown a perfectly good plant from grocery store cloves. So that's not really my objection. My objection is that you don't know what you're planting. Grocery store garlic is unlabeled. It's usually a softneck, often a California variety. It's frequently imported. You can't look up how much cold it needs or how it stores or whether it has even met a winter like what we have in our climate or your climate. So in my case, I'd be committing to 11 months of a container. Now, if I had the space, I could see it being a fun experiment, to be honest. But in my limited driveway garden space, I want to make sure I know exactly what I'm getting and I have the best chance to get a good garlic. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be working on my growing technique this year. So I don't want to be questioning whether the issue is that I got a clove from the supermarket rather than using seed garlic. Now, I don't like to lead with the scary part, but there is a more serious reason not to use grocery store garlic. It may be minor and remote as a possibility, but it's still a possibility. Garlic can carry a disease in the clove. White rot in particular will stay in your soil for years, and there's no cure for it. You lose that ground or that potting mix for growing garlic for years afterwards, or other alliums for that matter. Table garlic ultimately is graded for how it looks, not whether it's clean in that way. A pound of seed garlic runs 3 or 4 times what a pound of table garlic costs, so there's a real incentive to just use the stuff from the grocery store. I get it. But set against 11 months of space and soil problems you can't undo, it's not worth it for me. Once I get my growing techniques sorted out here at the driveway garden, that is. I mentioned Territorial seed earlier. I did end up ordering the elephant garlic from them because I didn't see it on the other producers. I've grown elephant garlic in the past and it's a fun one. Elephant garlic actually isn't a garlic. It's a type of leek, but it grows on monster-sized bulbs that look and smell like garlic. I think it's going to be a fun project to share with you all this next season, growing the elephant garlic here in the driveway garden. So that's it. I just wanted to share with you what I'm doing here and give us all something we can refer back to after I plant it. We'll see how it goes this coming year. There's something faintly absurd about all of this, which I rather like. It's the middle of August. The garlic won't arrive now for another 6 weeks. It goes in the ground in October. It sits the whole dark half of the year doing very little that I can see, and I won't pull it till next July. 11 months in the same pot for one crop. Almost nothing else in the garden asks for that kind of patience, which is probably why it's the one I relate to the most. I love working on long, patient projects. If you're thinking you may want to grow garlic in your garden, this is your reminder that it's probably about time to start looking at buying your seed garlic. Whether you pick it up at a local nursery or you buy online from a catalog the way I am and shipping it, you'll want to get it while you still have options before they sell out. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.